Hi guys, and welcome to another exciting episode of Looks and Wisdom Sundays with me, Oluchi. And this month we are celebrating the 1 year anniversary of BEFOREWE. So every week I'll be taking you through certain chapters. And last week we ended with communication. This week we are doing forgiveness, boundaries, and relationships. So I'm very, very excited about that. So without further ado, forgiveness. Forgiveness is really a very important concept that we undermine its importance. And in the book, I talk about how the doer forgets, but the person who the act was done upon has a hard time forgetting. And the person who did is not as impacted. And I remember I saw a couple of weeks ago on the Instagram, a lady was talking about how she had a hard time at a job and she had to quit. She had this animosity towards a manager, and she went on to start her own business. And fast track, like a few years later, she sees her manager in the shopping mall, and she passes by her and she says hi. The manager does not remember who that person was, and she had carried this resentment for a long time. I'm going to build myself so corporate that it wasn't important. And really the essence and the importance of understanding what forgiveness is understanding that the person who committed the act is going on with their lives as usual, and you're out here carrying all this resentment in your heart and you can't move past it. And I did make an example about myself in terms of my romantic relationships, of how I needed to forgive all of that because I didn't know what I didn't know. And for me, it just manifested in me being in spaces that I was not supposed to be in. And I had to sit with myself and I had to be like, what is going on? And I made a list of everything. And it turned out that I was the one who was holding on to things that I wasn't supposed to in the first place. And in order for me to be free, I had to forgive the people who I thought were trespassers in my life. And I had to forgive myself, most importantly, for being in that mental space that allowed me to attract those things. So when you're forgiving, it's very important to take accountability. No forgiveness comes without accountability. You can go on and be like, I forgive you, but it never works until you realize that you were as part of the act as the next person. And I'm not talking about people who are raped, physically abused or anything like that. I'm just talking about a situation where you need to forgive. You were part and parcel of that. And the minute you realize that, you need to be able to let it go. And how you forgive is by going back, and I give this to all my coaching clients and everybody, is the fact that regardless of how traumatic the situation you had to go over was or under, you have to go back to that situation and experience its pains or its joy as it was, and then you need to be able to let it go. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to release and forgive a situation that you haven't fully experienced, fully allowed to understand and have a conversation with, and then having the ability to let go, which is what I needed to do in my romantic relationships. Forgive myself for being in that headspace that allowed me to be in that space, and forgive the perpetrators that were my co-actors, and forgive myself as the main steering who orchestrated all of this. And forgiveness takes a lot of accountability and knowing that you were as present as the next person was. So that's what I wanted to say about forgiveness, is the fact that if you can't forgive, you're the one that ends up carrying the burden for the rest of your life. The person has forgotten about you the minute they finish committing the act. So you just need to take a bit of accountability. Well, not all of it, because you're never fully responsible for an act that was committed by two people. As much accountability as possible for yourself. And you need to forgive yourself, forgive the perpetrators, and then just throw it back to the universe. The second thing I wanted to talk about is the fact that if you have accountability and learn to forgive, the next chapter, which is setting boundaries, then becomes easier, because you know where you were wrong as a person, and you know why you had to forgive the next person, and you know where it was wrong in the first place. So you know where to put boundaries. If somebody physically abused you, you know exactly where to draw the line if you don't want to be physically abused. If you're emotionally abused, you had gone back there, you had experienced it again from a different light, you had known the role that you played, and you know exactly where to set boundaries. Boundaries come when you have accountability for your life. If you don't know where you're going wrong, or you don't know where the next person is going wrong, and no one knows where everybody's going wrong, everybody's always going to be in the wrong. But if you take accountability for yourself and forgive everybody else that was not involved, stand a better chance of creating healthy boundaries, because you know exactly where it went, because you know exactly where it went wrong in the first place, so that you don't repeat the same thing again. And exactly, I set so many boundaries around my family, because I was the ATM, and I was like, no, it's not going down like that anymore. And to my friends as well, and to people that are new, because I'm such an empathic person, and I'm such a a giver, and so I had to be like, you better lay low. Just cut it down a little bit. And so boundaries, what I wanted to say, the most important thing about boundaries is the fact that they do not make it difficult for people to deal with you. No, what I said in the book is that it is terms and conditions, the same way that Apple makes you agree to those terms and conditions when you're getting a new phone. It is terms and conditions on how people get to experience you, according to you, not according to what you think, but according to me. This is how I want you to experience me. This is how I want you to come into my life. So I've put this box here so you don't overstep. And if you overstep, just know that you are going to be thrust away again, because we don't play those games. So definitely boundaries are a way of protecting yourself and protecting your spirit and protecting your aura and protecting everything that's around you. And narcissistic people cannot come in, egoistic people cannot come in, or people who are self-centered cannot come in. You need those boundaries, because as an empath, I know that they are vultures, and the vultures are going to come and try to take away all of my empathic spirit. So I need to be cognizant of that. And as vultures, they are aware that there are empathic people who they can abuse. Narcissists know that there are people who they can abuse. Like for every person who's an empath that exists, I'm sure there's like 10 times narcissistic, egoistic people that exist. So you need to create those boundaries and know who you are, with your family, with your job, with your boyfriend, with your friends, with everybody that you interact with. They need to know where the buck stops, and the buck stops with you. The last chapter I wanted to talk about, so once you forgive yourself for everything, staying in a toxic work environment, staying with bad friends, being peer pressured to doing things that you wouldn't want to do in your life, you get to forgive yourself. The essence of me putting that forgiveness is the fact that forgiveness is forgiving yourself ultimately. Really, it is about forgiving yourself, not the next person, because really they are the next person. Your mind is your mind. And creating boundaries then allows you to exercise that forgiveness. Okay, I was in the wrong for allowing these certain things to happen in my life. I'm not anymore, and I'm putting these certain boundaries to protect myself and protect my spirit. And then when I moved over into relationships, then it goes back 360. Since I've got all of this knowledge about myself now, how do I want to be partnered up with people, partnered up with work, partnered up with a boyfriend, partnered up with a child, partnered up with my parents? So basically the relationship chapter talks about how you form relationships and what's important when you are forming those relationships. And because I didn't have a romantic interest at the time, and when I wrote this book, and because I wanted it to focus on something that was either than a romantic relationship that has sexual connotations, I wanted to focus on something that's more platonic, and that was my friendship with my best friend. And how our differences and our similarities form our yin and the yang. I spoke about the fact that she is an outgoing person and I'm not. To this day, that's still a factor. I mean, I spoke to her the other day. She was like, I'm going out. And I was like, child, please, I'm staying at home. So it's still those things that, like, people always say that the things that you didn't like or you noticed first about the person, those are the things that are always going to stay. And I remember the first time I saw my best friend, I was like, oh, she's up there. And those are the things I say right now. I'm like, oh, she's out there, because she is out there. And that's our disconnect. But we have a lot of connections, and building relationships is about understanding the differences and making sure that you honor the person's differences. Like, I'll never be like, don't go out. So basically what I wanted to put forth about relationships is the fact that the differences are the ones that carry the relationship in the long run, because the similarities are what you guys have in common already. So it's not a factor to be fighting against or towards. And the differences are what keeps the relationship interesting. So when it comes to relationship, one thing I've learned is the fact that the differences really are what make you unique and what makes the relationship stick, more than the similarities. And both are as equally important. And in order for you to be in a healthy, functional relationship, you need to be self-aware. You need to know who you are, what you are bringing to the table. You need to be aware of what the next person is bringing to the table, so that you can grow together as two different people going in a similar direction. Not the same. I always say it has to be parallel. You can't be going to the same direction. It clashes. You guys have to, because you're both two individuals, whether it's your mother, whether it's your son or daughter or a boyfriend or whatever. The whole point is that everybody is different, and we're going in a different direction, whether we're going in the same direction. And really what makes us different is our mind and how we think. We cannot be a same person, because we think differently all the time. And yeah, with regards to relationship, respect the differences, because they're the ones that take the relationship on the long run. And the similarities are great and fantastic, because that's what builds the relationship in its infancy. And forgive yourself and set boundaries. Basically, that's it. Thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Those who didn't get it, forgive yourself. That means you're forgiving the next person automatically. Set boundaries to protect yourself, and form relationships that are healthy and support you. Yep, that was it. Thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. See you next week for another exciting episode of Looks and Wisdom's. See you next week for another exciting episode of Looks and Wisdom Sundays with me, Oluchi. Thank you.
Thank you for joining. See you next week with another episode of Looks and Wisdom with Oluchi.